Hello, this is Florence, the mathematics user, and we have an example under factorial, and I would want us to go over and get to understand. Now here, we are given 4 factorial n factorial over into bracket n minus 1 factorial multiplying 3n is equal to k. Now, we just need to remember our concept of factorial. We learned that it is a product of all positive numbers, positive whole numbers, from n, that is a given number, down to 1. Now, but when you study this question carefully, we have a denominator here, which is n minus 1 factorial. Now, one of the things we can do is to ensure that the denominator, the factorial down here, is taken away. Which means when we focus on the numerator, we can rewrite what we have here such that it will help us in clearing the n minus 1 factorial. So from the concepts we've already learned, our 4 factorial will be written as 4 multiplying 3 multiplying 2 multiplying 1. Then our n factorial here, they are multiplying, will be written as n, as we write the number. Then the next one will be n minus 1. But when you study the question carefully, in the denominator, we have n minus 1 factorial. So now what do we do? Now, know that we can continue with this n minus 1, n minus 2. But for the purposes of doing away with n minus 1 factorial, we just have to introduce the factorial sign here, which means that we can continue. We can continue with what we have here, getting n minus 2, n minus 3. But since we want to cancel out n minus 1 factorial, we just end here. But you cannot end without the factorial sign. Then we have our 3n is equal to k. So therefore now, n minus 1 factorial will cancel n minus 1 factorial. By simplification, 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 will give us 24. Times n gives us 24n over 3n is equal to k. By simplification, 3n goes into 24n 8 times. So therefore, our k is equal to 8. Our next example is into bracket n minus 2 factorial over n factorial is equal to 1 over 56. How do we solve this question? If you study this carefully, it will be advisable to deal with the n here, which is a larger number. And basically, when it comes to factorial, it is advisable to break down the larger number. Because as you break down the larger number, you get to a point where the other smaller number will be found there. Then we can cancel out. So here, we are going to maintain n minus 2 factorial. But we are going to break this one down. And by the concept of factorial, it is the product of all positive whole numbers from n, that's a given number, down to 1. So n factorial here becomes n into bracket n minus 1, n minus 2. We can continue to n minus 3, n minus 4. But when you study the numerator, we have n minus 2 factorial. Therefore, we can end here and introduce factorial, which means that we could have continued. But since we want to do away with n minus 2 factorial, we end here. Is equal to 1 over 56. What is the next thing we do? Now we can cancel out. We are going to have 1 over n into bracket n minus 1 is equal to 1 over 56. Now remember that this can be expanded. So n times n is n squared. Minus 1 is n times minus 1 is minus n. Now we have n squared minus n, because when the whole of this multiplies 1, we get this one. And n into bracket n minus 1 is n squared minus n. Here, 56. If you study this carefully, this is going to give us a polynomial with a degree of 2. So we rewrite this as n squared minus n. 56 becomes minus 56 is equal to 0. Now, with the use of a calculator, we can simply solve this. Without a calculator, we find the factors of the constant here, which when summed up will give us minus 1, which is the coefficient of n. So we have n squared minus 8n plus 7n minus 56 is equal to 0. Now, by factorization, n out, n minus 8 plus 7 out, n minus 8 is equal to 0. Now we have n minus 8, n plus 7 is equal to 0. So remember, we are equating each of them to 0. So our n minus 8 is equal to 0 will give us n is equal to 8. Then n plus 7 is equal to 0 will give us n is equal to negative 7. So when you study this carefully, now we can say that our n is equal to 8. Why not negative 7? Now remember, from the definition, we said factorial deals with the product of positive whole numbers. This is not a positive whole number. So our answer will be focused on 8. So therefore, n is equal to 8. Looking at our third example, we have 8 factorial over 6 factorial multiplying 2 factorial. From what we've learned, or from our concept we've already established, I'm going to solve this question in 2 ways. 8 factorial here will give us 8 multiplying 7 multiplying 6, 5 multiplying 4, multiplying 3, multiplying 2, multiplying 1. All over 6 factorial, which is 6 multiplying 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then the 2 factorial will give us 2 multiplying 1. I'll use another method to solve this question. Now here, you realize that 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 exists over here. So basically, the whole of this will cancel this. So we are left with 8 multiplying 7 all over 2 times 1. 8 times 7 is 56. And we know 2 times 1 is basically 2, giving us 28. Now, we can also solve this question in this manner. Repeating this, we know we have 8 times 7 times 6 factorial. I'm ending with the factorial because I don't want to continue. All over 6 factorial multiplying 2 factorial. What is happening here? The 6 factorial exists as a numerator and a denominator, so we cancel out. 8 times 7 is 56. 2 factorial, from what we've already said, is 2. And therefore, our answer is 28. Let's take another question. We have 20 factorial over 18 factorial. If you study this carefully, let's deal with a larger number. So 20 factorial will give us 20 times 19 times 18. We can continue, but looking at the denominator, 18 factorial, I can end here with a factorial sign. over 18 factorial. And since it exists as a denominator and a numerator, we can cancel out. Now we have 20 times 19. 2 times 19 is 38. Then we just introduce the 0. 380. Our next question is 5 factorial over 2 factorial, 4 factorial. Now when we study this, let's introduce a square here. How do we go about this question? It is very simple. We just have to deal with what is in a bracket. Then also deal with what we have as a denominator. Then we square. Because here we're told this one is to the power 2. So this will give us 5 times 4 times 3. We can use the calculator to do this, but I want you to understand it. Times 2 times 1 to the power 2 all over 2 factorial, which is 2 times 1, multiplying 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. When we study this, 5 times 4 is 20, times 3 is 60, times 2 is 120, times 1 is still 120, to the power 2, all over 2 times 1 times 4, 8, times 3, 24, times 2, 48. Now with the use of the calculator, 120 times 120 will give us 14,400 over 48. Then 48 into 144 is 3. Then we bring the 2 zeros here. And this is 300. We could have used the calculator to get the answer straight away. But for the purposes of understanding, this is what we need to do.